BankservAfrica Economic Transactions Index showed record growth in May. Let's get more on this. I'm joined by economist Mike Schussler. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Just explain that index to us and why it's significant.
Well, this index is very much what we call a nowcasting index. It comes out very much in a short time period after the end of the month and gives us a very broad overview of the actual economy. It is not an index that's focusing on one sector. And it's not an index that is made up of telephone calls. It is actually economic transactions behind it. With other words, an EFT transfer. There used to be checks in the old days, a debit order, all those sort of things that go through the banking system. And it allows us to track the volume and the value of transactions. We then obviously deflate the value with a deflator. And that gives us a good idea how GDP is doing. And for example, for us, GDP wasn't that much of a surprise in the first quarter because we knew it was going to be positive. We were just wondering how strong it was. We were thinking 3.5 to 4, and it came in a bit stronger. But, it gives us a very good idea. And right now, it's saying to us that in April, things went very well. In May, they started flattening slightly, but the economy was still doing well. Now we'll have to see what the load shedding impact is going to be for this month.
Yeah, let's speak about that. We're on stage 4 now. Eskom announcing that we're going to go from stage 4 from 2 to 10 p.m. And then afterwards, people will get a reprieve perhaps by only going on to level 2 in terms of load shedding. What's that going to do to our economy and the kind of volumes that we're seeing in terms of transactions?
Well, when we have load shedding in South Africa, every kilowatt hour costs us on average 17 Rand lost to the economy. So if we look at that and we say in the daytime it's a bit more, at nighttime obviously a bit less. Most of this will be in the nighttime, but the afternoon for many firms will come to a quick end. It will hurt the economy, and therefore, you're probably talking 17 million Rand per hour lost to the economy per stage. So 4 stages here, we're looking at per hour 68 million Rand loss. We do make up some of that over time again. But if the load shedding continues at this sort of load shedding stage 4 pace, it's going to be very damaging to the economy. Obviously, we have no idea what mitigation processes are in play, but our economy was doing very well. We saw with the GDP numbers, we saw with the BankservAfrica numbers now, that we're doing very, very well. Obviously, part of it is the high mining and commodity prices that we get. It's not anything to do with us. It's our windfall, if you wish. But ultimately, against the high commodity prices, the great export earnings we're having, the strong rand, low interest rates, now all of a sudden we've got load shedding and in some cases even water shedding running against us. So it's going to be a very interesting number come June.
Yeah, when you say our economy is doing very well, how do we balance that against some of the other data that we've seen, the record high unemployment figures that came out, and the fact that our economy is growing slower than perhaps it did last year at pre-pandemic levels? So we are still battling on a day-to-day basis in the country.
Yes, look, the economy is still in the recovery phase. We haven't reached the pre-pandemic levels of 2019, and 2019 was not a great year either.
Yeah.
And we'll probably only reach that sometime next year. But let's put it this way, the we lost over 2 million jobs at one stage. We've now lost only 1.3 million jobs, which is still a lot, but we've seen a significant bounce back. And then on the job side, firms first need to get going. They need to have that production there first before they employ people. So employment and unemployment's always a lagging indicator. And as we see confidence creep back in the economy, we will see more employment.
Okay.
However, we must remember in South Africa, every year, there are people that leave the economy because they are going on pension or the labor force. And then there are new people entering, young folk, leaving university, leaving school, looking for a job. The problem is that that's 600,000 more people entering than leaving. So if you've got that, you have to create 600,000 jobs a year just to keep the unemployment rate steady. So you could create, say, 200,000 jobs this year or in any year, and you would still see a rise in the unemployment number. So South Africa, to really get going, probably needs growth after we've recovered, in other words, after we've reached 2019 levels and so on, of about 4.5% a year for a long time to bring down that unemployment number. The unemployment shock of the COVID and the lockdown was huge. It was very, very big. We've never seen this sort of massive decline in our lifetimes. Even the 2008 global recession wasn't anything compared to it. This was even for 1 year's loss, it was greater than the Great Depression in the 1930s. This equaled the 1920, 100 years ago, decline that we saw then. It was a very different economy, of course, but it was really, really bad. And it takes a long time for business owners and for other role players, even in the informal sector, self-employed people, to gear up again and to gain that confidence back and then become sufficient again, and then start employing people. There is a recovery process still ongoing, and obviously not all the recovery, although all sectors other than agriculture and utilities were positive yesterday in the GDP numbers, and we're seeing great BankServ numbers here right through the economy, I believe. There will be sectors such as tourism and travel and leisure, when you go to a sports game or a theater or movie, they are still stuck in a bad situation. Flying is not back to where it was. Obviously, we're not seeing the foreign tourists come yet. We believe that will recover by the end of the year, but right now that's still got a long way. So
Mike, let's just get back to my apologies for cutting you off. Let's just get back to that index. And continuing with the theme of recovery, though, there were 108 million transactions that took place in the recorded times. Give us some insight into what kind of transactions those were.
Well, the average size of those transactions is about 9,000 Rand. And that tells you that it's not really retail transactions as much as it is transactions where a small company is buying from someone else. So it's a retailer buying from a wholesaler buying from the manufacturer buying supplies from another wholesaler, buying in the raw product. Where we cut off is at the 5 million Rand level, and believe it or not, that's what they call small transactions in the economy. So we don't track, for example, the mining sector that well. Parts of it, yes. But if you're going to be selling gold, to somebody overseas, we won't track that. But the rest of the economy we do track, and it pulls right through the economy. Some of these are EFT transactions where somebody's paying for something over the internet. Other transactions here are debit orders on your car, on your home payment. Those are the sort of transactions that we're tracking, and that gives us great insight into the economic activity in South Africa. We can't always say exactly what sectors, but we do know that it has a very close correlation with the GDP, and we do know as well is that our data is out earlier than most data that has a value in it, with other words, numbers of transactions or sales or whatever you wish. So ours is out early and quick, and it is more a case of the underlying economy.
All right. Mike Schussler, thanks so much for your time on SABC News this afternoon, explaining that BankservAfrica Economic Transaction Index showing record growth in May.